If you don't go, well, they're just going to find another volunteer. And that's okay. That's a systemic issue, but you have the opportunity all of the time as an individual to look at that bigger picture and decide if you want to be the one in the hamster wheel keeping it going.
Welcome to One Words, the podcast about solo travel. I'm your host Anja, and on today's episode we'll be discussing the world of volunteering while traveling. Before telling you more about that, a quick call to action. One Words is in the running for the German Podcast Audience Award, so please click the link in the show notes and give us your vote. Thank you. Back to the episode. Joining me today is Heather, a former volunteer herself and now host on Workaway, a leading platform for travelers looking to exchange work for accommodations and experiences. We'll be diving into the ethics of voluntourism, what to expect when volunteering abroad, and the impact it can have on both the traveler and the community. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world of volunteering together. Hi Heather, welcome back.
Hello.
We are going to talk about something very close to your heart, voluntourism and volunteering.
Yes.
So tell us something about it.
Voluntourism is a form of tourism where travelers participate in volunteer work, which typically means that it's unpaid. Also that would usually be for a charity or a nonprofit or something like that,
And did you do volunteering on your travels?
I've been a volunteer and I've been, we could say, a host. Yes. I participated in voluntourism through like a bigger organization, which means that you have less control and things can kind of slip through the radar because the project gets so big or belongs to a bigger like third party type of deal, and then yes, there's less oversight with time, so the responsibility for either party to fulfill contractually whatever was agreed upon can start to slip away. On the other side, voluntourism can be so casual that there is no contract, that there is no kind of responsibility for the host to meet certain terms and conditions, and there's no attachment for the volunteer to stay or to be obligated. So there's problems on kind of either side of that spectrum, and there's lots of great things. It's a very attractive industry for foreigners to participate. If they have the option to be somewhere for longer, you start to kind of itch around and find out what you can do. Yeah. And voluntourism is usually there. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry internationally, so there's plenty of opportunities for anyone to participate in a variety of ways, in a variety of industries. So if you are looking for something to do, you've probably participated even if you didn't know it, and so we're going to talk about what that might look like.
So there are many different ways. I remember when I went the first time to India, I looked into a project, so I did voluntourism. I booked kind of in an agency where I paid for accommodation, food, being picked up, blah, 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 blah. And also like getting the education I needed for the job, where I was then put in. So I volunteered at a kindergarten. For me, it was a good experience to getting to know the country, how things work, how I have to behave, what's appropriate. It was rather expensive, but there are different kind of ways. Like when you just visit some place, you could do like a beach cleanup, or I don't know, volunteer at shelter or something, like just for one day. But then there are other things where you could stay longer. So when you're thinking of the word voluntourism, is all of that included?
Yes.
Or is it okay?
Yes, it's all encompassing. So your experience was pre-planned, pre-researched. You sought out education. It was a paid program, so you exchanged money in order to give your time. we'll talk about that later and why an organization would choose to charge. And then, yes, the other examples you gave, like a walk-in idea, a walk-in beach clean where you're giving an hour or two casually because it's opportunity-driven. It's something that you saw was happening or heard about or someone asked you to participate in where you already are. Yeah, so anything between your experience, paid, long-term, pre-planned, etc., to 1 hour, walk-in, free, and everything in between. It's all voluntourism. A foreigner is coming into a community and is giving time, even if it's just an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds kind of a good thing.
Sure. I would say the intention is almost always positive, especially from the volunteer themselves. It's because someone they want to participate, they want to learn, they have time to give. They have the privilege of time to give that. Maybe they have a particular skill set to offer, but the impact does not always balance with the intention.
Okay.
And so that can be a little bit more difficult to see, and we might not know until we're in the experience how that's going to play out. Because everything can be, your experience in India can be like so on paper, and then you can arrive and it might not be what you signed up for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's always the case. It could
Sure.
also be like I book a hotel and then I show up
Yes.
and it's like ruined.
Yes, of course. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that's the risk of
going
places you've never been before.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a common one for young people is to volunteer in a hostel. So instead of paying, it's usually offered to people who are already staying there because the manager or whomever is able to develop and connect with you and develop a relationship. And then there's already a level of trust there. I'm assuming they're looking for someone that's not stealing from their bunkmates and, shows up within the curfew hours and cleans up after themselves and that type of thing. So, I had one of those experiences where I was kind of offered to no longer have to pay for my stay and instead give my time. And it was a very negative experience. It's hard to see until you have the hindsight, but it's a very common story of being taken advantage of, even if it's just for your time. The type of person I was working for was highly emotionally manipulative and narcissistic, and those personality types are already challenging to be in relationship with in general, let alone for that person to have power over you, to be your boss. And because it's so casual, there's no contract. If you're making an agreement, the most security you have is that it's a text message instead of a spoken conversation, but things can change. And there's one thing to say that, oh, well, that job is flexible, and there's another to have agreed upon hours so that you're allowed to have a life outside of that. Yeah, so it was definitely not a good situation, and it wasn't until after I had left that I realized how much it was directly my manager's personality and the fact that they took advantage of everybody around them, which leads to a toxic work environment. And when everyone is being treated like that, and that's the norm, you kind of get lost in that. But this is a very common story, whether it's being taken advantage of for hours, whether it's, personality-based, kind of like any other workplace, except for you're in a foreign country. It almost feels like you have no rights. And whatever rules and systems that place has made up kind of rules. And, one could say that it's cultural, but it's not, because usually if you're a white foreigner volunteering for an organization, you're probably working under another white foreigner. I was in Thailand, if that was a Thai-run business, they wouldn't be picking a random white person who's staying as a guest. That's a totally different system, right? Yeah. If it was Thai-owned, there would probably be more paid jobs to local people. So that was this hostel's own issue and how they ran their business. And it just extended to how they treated their volunteers.
But it's also a legal problem, no? I think in most countries it's illegal to work without a work permit, and even being not paid, it's still working.
Yes.
So as you said, there's no contract, blah, 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 blah. So if there is an accident or anything, like there's no work insurance and many different things. So it's always kind of on the verge of illegal voluntourism.
It's almost always illegal. Yeah. If you're doing something casual, yeah, that is illegal. If you don't have a work permit, you can't work for money. If you don't have a volunteer permit or a volunteer visa, you cannot exchange your time, irregardless of like the contract per the business. The entire idea and concept is illegal. So if the local bar and restaurant uses volunteers to supplement their workforce, if the police, immigration, whatever relevant forces showed up and that foreigners working behind the bar, that's a problem. And different organizations or businesses may offer certain levels of protection. That's going to depend on the community, this type of idea. But yeah, 100%. If there's a noise complaint at the hostel and the police show up and the person who unlocks the door, that person would be coached to lie and to say that they're just a guest in this type of idea. But then, wait, there's no local paid staff? Well, then who's running the place, right? So it depends how many questions want to get asked. It depends if it's worth their trouble or not. It often is not. But yes, I think a lot of people don't even realize that what they're participating in is illegal and potentially putting themselves in danger.
But there are like sites like Workaway and stuff, which also are going for people who are looking for volunteering kind of things. So I have a legal website thing, or it looks kind of legal what is offered there, and I go there under the I think it's all okay to work there, and then it's not, so that's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. I mean, we could hope that the host or organization or business would feel obliged to be honest with people and to clarify in case they don't have the common sense and they don't have the foresight that someone has said or put in words beforehand that to clarify that there isn't this legality around that experience. If we looked at all the places on Workaway, which we use sites like Workaway because it's a third party, it's a third party database essentially. So it offers a security to the people in that there's a review system, a feedback system. There's some place to report to if you had a concern, if you have a difficulty, if you were treated poorly, if something was mismanaged, if there was a misalignment of expectations, that both the volunteer and the host have an opportunity to provide feedback, which is a key part of maintaining the responsibility of the experience. But that does not make the experience itself legal.
Yeah. So you worked as a volunteer, but also now manage a facility that takes in volunteers.
Yeah. So I operate as a host for a nonprofit. Within our community, that conversation of legality is between me and the volunteer, the potential volunteer or the new volunteer. I would say it's the same for everybody, that conversation becomes just between them. You could look up the laws in any particular country and kind of know what you're signing yourself up for.
But you signed yourself up for it before, and you're a very capable person.
Yeah.
So I know you probably knew it's kind of not legal, but it's okay. And, well, you can walk out anytime because you're not paid, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So why did you do it?
I was already living abroad and I'd been doing pet sitting for a year, and COVID hit and I was staying abroad. And that's why I did the hostel volunteering. The hostel, the pet sits had dried up because no one could leave, even on domestic vacations, with provincial borders closing. So I was staying at a hostel long-term instead, and that's why I took the opportunity, because I didn't know how long we would be locked down like that. And I knew how much it was saving me every day to be volunteering for 5 hours instead of paying rent. So that's why I did that experience. And that experience, I needed to get out of that experience as quickly as possible. So I found an alternative through Workaway. I applied to all of the animal-related volunteering opportunities in Thailand, in the country I was in. And I went to the first one that answered. Most of them won't answer. The response rate, is quite low. A lot of these organizations, the priority job is not going to be social media, might not be on recruitment, so that might be something that kind of slips behind for just operational reasons. Yeah, I think I probably applied, I don't know how many there were at the time, but I'd like to say something like 30 or 40, like a significant number of applications. And then I only heard back from 2.
Okay.
So pretty low rate.
What would you say if someone wants to do volunteer through Workaway? What are the things to look for in a host?
Workaway is a really wonderful website, and everything is filtered very well, so you can really, just like if you're booking a hotel, right? Like you can pick your parameters of how many beds you want, AC or not, what dates are available. All those things are available for you on Workaway. You can filter by type of work, filter by industry. You can filter by, I think they have like the UN has these goals, international goals. And so if you could filter by one of those goals, if the organization is participating in reaching that goal, you can filter by anything. And so use the parameters. Don't apply for things you don't want to do. It's a waste of the host's time. It's a waste of your time. Check the dates. Check the calendar. Reread the message before you apply. Don't just copy and paste. Maybe copy and paste if you're applying to a lot, but you have to change things. Like say hi to, the organization, or if a name is available to you. Make sure if you're applying to work with animals, you've put the word animal in there. If you're applying to work with kids, you've put the word kids in there. The host wants to see that you actually care about them and their organization or their industry. It needs to be personalized for sure. It's like applying for any job. I suppose some people take it less seriously, but this is an opportunity to practice for like real life workforce or for future volunteering opportunities. Like I would say just to treat it like applying for any other job that you would in the real world.
On the other way around, as a host, what do you look for in an application?
I think the things I look for are also things that the volunteer should look for. Like, do they have reviews? When is the last time they did something or participated? Definitely, if they have reviews, it makes it a lot easier. There's like this verification that, another host has worked with them, seen them, spent time with them as a person, and they're able to speak to that, and I can read about it, and that's very helpful. And I know people who look at our experience also do the exact same thing. So the reviews, for sure, the feedback system is very valuable.
How would I go to it if I start right now? Then I don't have any reviews, so maybe no one will pick me because...
Well, we have picked a lot of people who don't have anything, and that's going to be based off the quality of the communication, the timing, the timeliness of it, the quality of it, the clarity. I think you can also you can understand conceptually what that experience might need of you as a person, and you can exude those qualities in how you communicate. If our experience says needs to be an independent worker, and you ask every little question that's easily Googleable, that's not showing independence. The experience says get curious, learn new things, and you're not capable of showing initiative, that's going to be a problem. So a good host with a clear description on their profile will help you understand who might be a good fit or not. No one wants it to be a bad fit. A host doesn't want to take a volunteer who's not going to be the right personality, and the volunteer obviously doesn't want to waste their time and their energy going somewhere that's not going to be good for them. So if you have those doubts, or if you have that gut feeling that this isn't the right experience for me, I don't like talking with this person, I'm scared to go, I don't have trust, etc., then you don't have to go, right? Yeah. You can find something else. So we do get contacted by people who find us on Workaway but don't have a paid account. They might contact us on social media or WhatsApp. That's okay. But I do prefer the people on Workaway because I have this feedback system. I know I'm going to leave them a review after their 3 weeks. So again, that like internal built-in security mechanism of the site that they're paying for already creates a relationship and a level of trust that a person from outside would have to build with me to build the rapport. So I feel like I can take them on.
Yeah. And also when you paid for an account, it shows more interest, so it's maybe more unlikely that they will cancel on short notice or something because they already put money into it.
Yeah, they didn't put money into us, but they put money into the idea of these experiences. And if someone says they can't, it's like, you know, most of these sites are somewhere between $70 and $150 a year for trusted house sitters, Workaway, HelpX, this type of thing, couch surfing. If you can't put down $150, how does that speak to your ability to save and spend that money abroad? Because it's going to cost you probably more than $150 to get to your Workaway. It's a piece of the investment in the experience. Yeah. And if you can consider then trying to choose experiences that will balance out that money, right? And that you're probably not paying for accommodation. Maybe somewhere is also covering your food. Maybe you have free transportation. And those things are something you've already prepaid for and invested in that you're going to get back in the experience.
But coming back to the larger perspective of voluntourism, so we talked about I just put like an hour a week in, or like not constantly because I'm just there and I read it, or I go someplace where I applied for. I know I go there because I want to work there. And then, as I said, some people pay for having food and everything around there that they are able to work. What do you think about that? Is this an industry behind it that makes money off it, or is it a good thing that some people have to pay for?
That's going to be specific to the business. I'd say as a system or an industry as a whole, it's mostly negative. But let's look at the ethics of voluntourism. We'll look at 4 main points, and then I think that will kind of create an outline for us, and then we can look at some of those examples afterwards. So the first point would be that the volunteers can offer a specific skill set that is otherwise unavailable or inaccessible to the local community. Ideally, there may be an educational opportunity to grow the skills of long-term volunteers and or train members of the local community, hopefully in their preferred language, for accessibility, and that paid work is not being taken away from locals. So in your example, you said there is some education involved before going to provide a specific skill. So you were going to teach. Yeah. So often we can see countless examples of unskilled foreigners who, because of their race, passport, language, accent, etc., are automatically on a pedestal. So they are participating often in skilled positions, like teaching. Teaching is not an unskilled profession. English teaching is not an unskilled profession. And of course, there's going to be a emphasis on people who have English as a first language, which discounts a lot of Europeans. And even if they speak English as a second language, we're factoring in things like accent and that type of thing. So say for English teaching, there's going to be a priority in paid positions for American, British, Australian, Canadian passport holders. But in a volunteering position, there might be more demand to fulfill the position in general. So then you have people who are not fluent in that language teaching that language. Maybe the idea is that it's better than nothing, but we have to look at it and see, who is this benefiting? Is it actually benefiting the children to be taught by someone who doesn't know how to teach? Because educating is an incredibly specific profession. Is it being taught by someone who isn't fluent in the language? And then, is the experience actually just benefiting the volunteer? Is it actually just about them feeling like a savior, like having that hero complex of I've supported and I've helped and I've done something without having the impact, right? So the intention is there, the impact is not. And so then we have to look at that experience and say, maybe I shouldn't pursue that, shouldn't do it again. So specific skill set, maybe a medical clinic. Maybe you are a doctor, nurse, something like this. There's often times where the demand of the community, because there is an actual inaccessibility towards that profession, that they need you to do more than you would be qualified for in your home country. So that can also create some conflict for a volunteer. Maybe they're going there as a nurse and they're being asked to do more than they would be allowed to under a nursing license in their home country. You know, that's a personal understanding of, is it safe to be doing what I'm doing? Is what they're asking for me to do reasonable? Is it something I'm educated in? And I have this pullback because of legal reasons in my home country that I'm used to I'm used to not giving that specific skill. Maybe there is wow, I really need to learn this thing because this is exactly what they're asking for. And I'm closer than other people to be able to do it. So there can be conflict that way as well. Even a skilled person being asked to do things outside of their general skill set. Oftentimes, it's just this issue of an unskilled person being put into an unskilled job, which could be given to a local person as a paid job. And it's often a manager, boss, system, or company trying to minimize cost, saying, we don't need to hire hotel staff. We can just take 6 volunteers from work away. We'll offer them accommodation in an empty room, and they can clean our hotel for us every day. And then it's looking at what is the local wage for this country? What is a living wage for this country? What is the system with migrant and local workers? And why isn't this person hiring local people? Anyone is capable of learning to and participate as a cleaner for this facility. So I'm benefiting from it because I'm saving on accommodation, getting to visit somewhere I wouldn't have, etc. But it's actually the benefactor at the top, this CEO, boss, manager, whomever, is just trying to cut costs. And it's taking away paid, unskilled positions from local people. If you don't go, well, they're just going to find another volunteer. And that's okay. That's a systemic issue, but you have the opportunity all of the time as an individual to look at that bigger picture and decide if you want to be the one in the hamster wheel keeping it going.
Yeah, but I think it's very difficult to figure out if a job takes away from the local community if you're not there.
Yeah.
If you haven't been there.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you have to show up and leave early.
Mm.
If something is out of alignment, if you know in your heart, your gut, whatever, or you learn along the way, then we're always learning. And it's okay to reevaluate and to say that this isn't in alignment with my values or who I am as a person, or I don't like this. I don't like what I'm participating in. So I'm going to step back. And of course, there's the potential for conflict, but it can be constructive to have confrontation sometimes. And hopefully it can be done in a way that's neutral or de-escalating and wouldn't actually cause harm to either party. Number 2, the impact or action taken is long-term, continuing to impact the community after the volunteer departs.
How would I find that out? Well, of course, if I do something environmentally,
sure,
it might
planting
be easier.
A tree.
Yeah.
If you plant a tree,
but who is going to water it?
The assumption can be that the earth will water the tree and that the tree will grow, right? I think that's a good example. If a veterinary volunteer sterilizes a dog, that dog will be sterile for the rest of its life. There's no follow-up for that, right? If a human gets a vaccine, that vaccine's going to last for a year, 5 years, whatever. It depends on what we're talking about. So there are actions that outlast, right? If we're thinking of building things, potentially that will outlast the stay of the person. Number 3 is the priority is given to long-term volunteers to prevent a revolving door of international, primarily white temporary tourists. This gives more time for relationship and trust building, language development, and a deeper cultural exchange. This is more specific in that this is what our organization applies to our ethics of voluntourism. For sure, there are businesses and organizations who don't operate on a long-term system. For us, that's something that we can apply, which benefits the volunteer and benefits the community. So that works in context to us. Like we were talking about with different examples, there are plenty of walk-in type of ideas that's specifically built off short-term. Mm-hmm. There are things that are only, a few hours of time. There are organizations that do paid tours or donation-based tours as a substitute for volunteering to interact with the tourist audience. Mm-hmm. There's places that will do volunteering 2 times a week. Again, paid or unpaid, and you show up at a designated hour with or without an RSVP, and that's what is built into that business. So it's going to depend on the scale of the business, on the industry of the business. If something involves training, that organization might not choose a short-term approach because it's not beneficial to them, because they want people to have a know-how, right? Maybe they need an entire dedicated staff or volunteer full-time to give a tour or to teach a team, this type of thing. So it's going to depend on the business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But this idea of slowing down the tourism and of deepening the connection and experience is a nice option if it's accessible and helpful to the business to have a long-term person.
I know, but not for everyone it will be accessible, because people might want to do a volunteering thing and only have 2 weeks of holidays.
Right.
So they still want to give back in some way, but can't be there for months at a time.
Then there's an opportunity to look at the bigger picture. Okay, so I would like to give back to the community I'm visiting. This doesn't make sense based off what I've learned about voluntourism. I'm actually benefiting rather than the system. So I'm just going to go on holiday. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go enjoy my holiday for 2 weeks' time. I'm going to come back home with the seed planted in my mind. I'm going to find a local organization that I can volunteer with long term, apply my own skill set, or learn something new, right? Be educated in. And then I'm going to participate in that project for weekly, monthly, for the next 4 years, or for a significant number of hours. I think that's an opportunity for planting the seed, making an executive decision that there's a better way to give my time, and that might be actually at home, rather than giving temporarily to an unethical voluntourism opportunity abroad. Number 4 would be about the cost. Your experience in India was paid, and then the experience I gave of the hostel, I was not paying. I was giving time in exchange and getting a free bed. The experience my project offers is unpaid. The only time we ever wish it was paid is when people cancel, because it's really difficult to incentivize. Well, we don't want people to show up just because they paid, right? But this idea that we're at a loss every time someone cancels because we're at a loss of, we're understaffed. And the only solution to that, or the only thing that would make that a little less bitter, is to, at least we got some money for it. At least that booking had a deposit, right? We could do it like that so that people aren't obliged to stay just because they paid money. But something, so there's an incentive for people to show up or follow through or try harder. Sometimes there just is, you see the lack of effort that people make to actually show up to what they agreed to. It happens all of the time. And a lot of cancellations are last minute. And a lot of them are not outside of the person's control. A lot of them are personal decision making. So it would be nice as a host to have something as security for that person to show up. And oftentimes for people, that's money. We also talked about tours. Tours are an alternative to volunteering that allow people to show up and allow people to participate, probably on a lighter level. And then if it's paid, a paid tour or a paid volunteering, that organization is benefiting financially from foreign money, and they're able to reinvest that into staffing local people, into the goals of their project, whatever the business goals are. If it's unpaid, like us choosing to stay unpaid, it removes this obligation idea, it allows it to be more personal because it's not so much of a business exchange. So there's pros and cons both ways. Mm-hmm. But that's definitely something to consider if you're a volunteer looking for an opportunity. Like, why would the business charge? Where is my money going? And to understand like the reasoning for that. Sometimes it might not be for a positive reason. And so maybe we can deduce that from understanding what type of business we're going to visit and whatnot. There are a lot of experiences that are in this kind of negative side of voluntourism where people just want to feel like they've done something. Like, just take my money. I just want to feel like I'm ridding myself of guilt as as an individual, historically for my people, whatnot. Just take my money, do something good with it, because I don't know what to do with it. People also give things that aren't wanted or needed because they haven't asked the right questions. Mm-hmm. So it all comes back to that slowing down idea, to like understand the organization, understand the country, understand the culture, that type of thing. There are orphanages classify into a lot of voluntourism. There are a lot of orphanages kept open internationally because of voluntourism. Okay. Because people go, pay money, donate to the kids, bring them toys or whatever. And we hear these stories from inside these organizations. A story I've heard from the person inside was people donate toys and then the toys are taken away. Because if you see the toys, you say they don't need the toys and you stop bringing the toys. And maybe there's, they're able to sell them back to someone, it becomes part of a darker cycle. Same thing with books, right? It doesn't mean that the intended recipient is actually receiving the toothbrushes, the books, the shoes, whatnot. Mm-hmm. Often they are. Sometimes it's performative. And sometimes it goes beyond that into something worse. But this idea of say, with orphanages, it's not my industry, so I don't know the statistic, but it would be worth for listeners to look into of how many international orphanages are actually housing children who have one or both parents. Mm-hmm. But having the child there gives the business money because foreigners come, feel bad, give their dollar. Mm-hmm. And volunteers go to help the children, work with the children, teach them English. Mm-hmm. And these are not children in need of housing, in need of family care, who are available for adoption. These are children who belong to local families who are playing a role performatively for that business to be profitable. Yeah, so it can be really dark. I'd also like to talk about race. That's really important. Like I said earlier, that pedestal type of idea, this idea of the white man being on top, that even if you're coming in our home countries, what we might consider like a bottom level interaction, I'm coming in unpaid, I'm a volunteer, I'm not the manager, I'm not the boss, I'm not whatever. But you have this advantage in society. So there is this power dynamic there, which is made worse if you're white, if you're a man, this type of idea. Like, your privilege follows you no matter what country you go to. So if most of the volunteers are white, how does that interaction change how that business or individual interacts with the local community? There could be a language barrier, which it kind of amplifies that. But there is this power dynamic always. Mm. Even if you're just a volunteer, even if you're just helping. And again, this need to help. Another negative common story from voluntourism is of building houses, school, this type of idea. This unskilled, young, white person going to a foreign country, generally with people of color, saying, I'm going to build you a house, even though you've never built anything before. Being taught minimally so you can begin quickly to give your time. And there are these stories of people of how at nighttime, the locals would come and fix the work that they'd done. The local builders would come at nighttime. Mm-hmm. In morning, they would build another wall, whatever, and at nighttime it would be fixed by the local construction workers. These stories are incredibly commonplace. Mm-hmm. We really have to evaluate what is it that I want. Do I just want to make a difference? Do I want to feel like I've done something? Do I actually care about my impact? How can I measure what my impact might be? What research can I do beforehand to, within reason, kind of know what I'm participating in? And if I show up somewhere, it doesn't feel right, or I learn something new, and it no longer aligns with what I'm looking for, then how do I step away?
Are there cancellation rules in place on such platforms as Workaway? Like a how to or frequently asked questions kind of thing? How to...
If you cancel prior to showing up, you cannot be reported, because a host can only report someone who has shown up. It requires you to put in the dates that they were there for. You'd have to contact the company directly, which is still possible, but it's not common. The host can cancel any time up before they show up. The only way they can be reported is on a no-show. You can report a no-show. So if someone did not cancel prior to the date they are supposed to show up, then the host can report that. But you're a free agent. You're allowed to cancel. And the more heads up you can give to, sometimes it's out of your control, right? How many times do we get sick and can't take that flight, or there's a family emergency, right? So there's obviously, hopefully, a level of compassion and understanding on both sides that things might change. And the best thing we can do is communicate as much as possible ahead of time.
What else is important for you around the topic, what we haven't talked about yet?
Just to restate how important it is to find ways to participate in our local communities, because that does exist. And sometimes we forget about it because at home we're so busy with work, family, all that type of thing. But there are ways to give our time, maybe in less extreme ways and less obvious ways. And a lot of that is because it's a smaller, less immersive experience, but that still has a long-term impact to an industry or a community. And that can also help us reconnect to the community that we live in our kind of nuclear family world. We can get locked into our apartments and our homes and our family units. So it can be a nice way to reconnect with our neighbors, with immigrant populations, with demographics that aren't the same age, race, etc. as us. So it can be a nice place of connection, which I would generally say is a positive intention. And hopefully we can find organizations in our community that actually have a balanced, positive impact.
Do you think volunteerism is necessary? It became an industry, but do you think it matters or it makes a difference? Because, such as you said, sometimes it takes away from local workplaces, or it should be better that the government, local government, doesn't have like volunteers taking over from outside, but they have to build an infrastructure fills in the need, because it's something, it feels like it's something in between development work and tourism. Like there is the development, is it development in English? When, like the Red Cross or something goes to
we would
other...
say international aid or international development.
Aid, yeah. So you can do that, but for that you would have to apply for a job and be trained specifically, blah, 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 blah. So you can't volunteer there. And then there's voluntourism, and then there's tourism. Do you think this in-between is necessary?
No. I can imagine, though I don't know the historical implications, that it was an industry created out of a need, like a gap in industry, a gap in staffing. It's also an industry that was built off of comfort, because so many international charities and NGOs are foreign run by a foundation or by a person who is already a foreigner. And it may be easier for them to staff or collect volunteers who are of the same ethnicity, background, or language as them. I think we could also look at it and say that this was probably a business opportunity for a lot of organizations who aren't, they're not benevolent in this. There's more of a negative story behind the industry or behind the business, where all of, this tourism, this traditional tourism industry is being booming. In so many countries, a country like Thailand, a lot of the GDP is reliant on tourism. a lot of countries had to economically shift because of something like COVID. Mm-hmm. And so, well, we want a piece of the pie. There's all this foreign money coming in. How can we possibly benefit from it? And a lot of it has been helpful financially in creating, building, and maintaining foreign charities, but that volunteering aspect of it is not often necessary.
Mm-hmm. As we said, for the bigger picture, mm-hmm. but education-wise, for the personal growth, because it's a young industry, mm-hmm. Young people mostly do this kind of thing. I think it's positive, and it can be very, very good shaping these kind of people and making them aware mm-hmm. of problems worldwide.
Right. A lot of the young travelers are traveling at a point like before prefrontal cortex development. Like, I don't know anything about the world yet. Maybe I've never lived alone. I left my mom's house. I don't even know how to cook a meal, right? So along with this like experience of life skill development, this planting of seeds of other industries and worlds that they're not familiar with, and it certainly can have a positive impact on the individual in an awareness that these things even exist. Mm-hmm. And of course, the best way to learn is by participating. That's going to be a bit of a deep dive. Yeah. So whether it's negative or positive, you've still learned something.
Would you do it again as a volunteer, not as a host?
Sure. If I can evaluate it as something where I'm not, again, I can look at this kind of list. I'm offering a specific skill set, or if I am offering an unskilled skill, that sounds funny. If I'm offering unskilled labor, that there's some type of reason that I can understand why local people aren't being paid to do that the impact, whether that's what I do as individual action or what the company or business or nonprofit is doing, is going to outlive me or outlive my time there, that I'm staying, participating in something long term, or participating in something short-term because of a specific business model. I'm evaluating, if I am paying for an experience, why and where is that money going? So I can use that list as an outline, a filter or perspective, so I can make these choices to participate in hopefully as ethically as possible. Mm-hmm. I don't think saying no to an industry and boycotting is necessarily the solution for voluntourism. There are certainly honest, true, and good work to be done out there, and it can certainly be a life-changing experience for many people.
Thank you so much for your insights. A lot to think about, and I hope that it helps a lot of people how to choose their volunteer experience, mm-hmm. and maybe it brings some people to your humble workaway.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope that this offered food for thought.
Thank you for joining us on One Word today. If you want to know more about the NGO Heather runs, visit the site of Koh Mak Animalclinic. You'll find the links to it in the show notes. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some valuable insights. If you did, please consider leaving us a rating and review on your preferred podcast platform. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with future episodes. If you found our conversation particularly helpful, please share it with your friends and colleagues who might also benefit. We appreciate your support and hope to continue bringing you engaging content and conversations. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on One Words. Last but not least, don't just listen to us, go find out.